people were like, "You are what?" Like, nobody's buying vinyl. CDs are in a downspin. Like, we should open a record store. We should do that.
What a great idea.
What a great idea.
I'm Brandon Dawson, and this is The Distiller, a podcast about how we find meaningful work and how we find meaning in the work we do. My guest for this episode is Darren Blase. Darren and his brother Jim are the co-owners of ShakeIt Records, a Cincinnati-based record store, record label, and increasingly publishing imprint. This is one of these great conversations that I might have thought was going to be about one thing and ends up being about something so much more and better. ShakeIt is a Cincinnati landmark, regularly listed as one of the top record stores in America, with over 20,000 CDs and something like 50,000 vinyl records. It's the place you go to find out about new music, to see a band perform in store, or just to hang out and talk music with whoever's behind the counter. I kind of assumed we'd spend our time talking about the ins and outs of running a neighborhood record store in today's musical and technological climate. And we did cover that, but mostly we talked about Darren's fascination, maybe obsession, with Cincinnati's musical legacy, his self-directed path to essentially becoming a primary researcher of some of America's most important music. And we talked about how, with everything at our fingertips, we remain truly open to new things, how we cultivate the capacity for amazement. Darren and I met on a beautiful spring Wednesday morning at Melt Revival, a wonderful, eclectic neighborhood cafe with a delicious, healthy menu featuring some of the best vegetarian options in Cincinnati. Melt is just a couple blocks down the street from ShakeIt on Hamilton Avenue in Northside in Cincinnati. Diane, Shannon, and the Melt Revival crew let us take over their back room just as they opened for breakfast. You can probably hear in my voice the sounds of a lingering head cold. Sorry for that. Unfortunately, that's present through the episode, but hopefully I'll let Darren do most of the talking. And I think you can probably make out the strains of Blondie in the background as Darren and I jump in. No sooner did Darren sit down than he pulled out a set of the brand new Cincinnati Musical Legends trading cards he's been working on that are going to be released later this month. We didn't really describe them when we talked because he didn't realize we were already recording, but we referenced them throughout the conversation, so I didn't want to cut that part out. Please check out our website for photos of the cards. They are so cool. Okay, with that, here's my conversation with Darren Blase of ShakeIt Records on The Distiller.
Yeah. Hey, I wanted to show you these because we just got these the other day. So this is a project that we're working on.
Uh-huh.
That's the first of 4 sets that we're doing.
What a cool idea.
Yeah, so...
How far back does this kind of
so it'll start in 1890. Dude. Yeah, with like the Ohio Recording Company.
Cool.
So and then they have like little bios on the back and everything, and so.
Oh, see, this is the stuff I want to talk to you about.
Yeah. So
this is really cool. So are these are these for sale?
They'll be out in June. They sent us like the first like little pre-pack.
Okay.
And then they ship the rest of them.
Oh man.
They actually ship April 23rd.
Okay.
Like the bulk drop ship thing. So.
Dude, this is so cool.
Yeah. So that's been this is kind of like my. That's what keeps me sane now.
Yeah.
So you'll know. The first edition will have the Scott Walker present on it because we okayed it, and then the next day he died.
Dude.
Yeah, so that says present. So we already changed that for the next 1,000. So there you go.
That makes them limited edition right there.
So yeah.
Oh, those are really, really cool.
Yeah.
Set number 1.
Yeah.
Do you know how many sets you're gonna do?
There'll be 4 sets total.
Okay.
Yeah, there'll be about 150 cards total.
Right.
Yeah. So.
And is this your baby? Is it you and Jim?
It kind of started the whole thing with, we just ripped off R. Crumb.
Uh-huh.
He did this like legendary blues thing.
Okay.
And then Justin Green, who's a local comic guy and who's good buddies with Justin, who were in that whole like San Francisco scene together.
Uh-huh.
He does all of our signs
Okay.
above the store and the signage inside and all that kind of stuff. And he's just a fascinating guy. And I was like, Justin, I want to do this. And so we were we started working on it. But he's mainly a sign painter these days. But he started developing this like eye ailment of he can't do this real fine hash work anymore. Mm-hmm. Like it was like severe dry eye.
Wow.
Like, he could work for 20 minutes like this way. You know, he can still do this, but he can't do
close
this
fine
stuff anymore. And so we kind of stalled, and I was like, Justin, man, I want to do this. I just want to finish this, you know.
Yeah.
And he's like, okay, let's figure this out. And I forget how it just popped in me. Maybe it was Colleen or somebody was in the store from Artworks, and I was like, wow, we should team with Artworks.
Yeah.
And I said,
oh, they would love that.
So I just called him and I said, we, not figuratively, but literally need like the 2 best draftsmen or drafts ladies that you have
in your stable.
Yeah. And so they found these like 3 really great kids, and we just kind of laid it out and just said, this is commercial art. This project is already started. You need to complement his style.
Yeah.
And so to complete
You're not making it your own.
You're not making it your own. This is paid work. This is whatever. Yeah. So, you know, and they put their own little bit into it and stuff like that. But it was great. Yeah. So these will be out, like we'll do the big rollout in June and stuff like that. And
that's really cool.
Things like that. So, but yeah, it'll start from about, you know, right now I'm researching all this like stuff on like the vaudeville theaters in Cincinnati, like in the 1870s, and 80s and all that kind of stuff. And
there's so much.
I mean, that's kind of like the whole thing that we're just doing now I'm just lining up all these projects of just reissuing stuff that's been out of print for years, putting out stuff that's never been out. You know, so many of these guys just have like, well, you know, we never put that record out. You know, just like, Jesus Christ, you know, and like you get a copy of it and you play it in the store and people are like, what the fuck is this? This is amazing.
Right.
You know, and so that's, yeah, and I mean, you know, it's rock, rockabilly, soul, funk, modern boogie, just, I mean, there's just so much of it that, you know, and then there's these things, and we're working on like, you know, I'm trying to figure out the copyright elements of like, there are these like magazines like Pride, which is like African-American like scene magazines. With just the photos are incredible. And like collecting that stuff.
And who owns that? And
just trying to figure out, they were kind of like these franchise things. And so like,
were they like zines back in the day, or? Kind
of, you know, they were kind of like next time you're in the store, if you look above the counter, there's like this newspaper called Soul. And it's like the Otis Redding obit one that we just have framed above the thing. And so, you know, 50% of it is just farmed out national stuff, like charts and like Wilson Pickett has a new record out and all this kind of stuff. But then they would plug in local interest stuff, like local ads and things like that. So, you know, you go through these things and they're just like, you're just like trying to find like, you know, there was a bar called the Psychedelic Grave, you know, all this kind of, just all these like funky shacks in Avondale and Reading and all that kind of stuff. So, but yeah, so that's been my, you know, like when I came back, we moved to Boston for about 6 years, and then came back, and I was just like, I still love being in the store, and like such a social thing for me. And much more than like a business thing anymore. Like I'm kind of like how do I want to put it? I mean, we could talk about this too. Like when we opened.
Well, and I started recording before you walked in,
that
so
great. That
like
great.
I don't want to do a gotcha or anything.
No, that's fine. But like you know, before we even like when Jim and I opened. We opened at like the height of Napster.
Right.
You know, and it was just like, and this is no lie, the first 2 people who I said, hey, I'm going to open a record store, who were not family. The first one called me a trust fund kid who could wait, who guess was going to be a write-off for a tax, you know, for a tax shelter for a rich dad, God. And then the other one called me an idiot. And so the only one that I totally know is not true is like the trust fund part, you know, like, so, and so we just like, we're like, we don't know how long this is going to work, you know? And so,
we'll talk about not riding a wave.
Oh my God, no. People were like, you are what? Like, nobody's buying vinyl. CDs are in a downspin. I'm like, we should open a record store. We should do that.
What a great idea.
What a great idea. Yeah. So, but it's kind of worked out. But like, but it was that whole thing. I mean, we opened with a couple grand and we sold our record collections, and then we just had our 20th anniversary and all that kind of stuff. So
See, and I didn't like. I'm not a Cincinnati kid. I moved here in 2005.
okay.
So I thought like that you guys had been open forever, because by the time I came and encountered Shake It, it seemed like an institution that had to have been
the creaky
here.
floors and everything.
Right, it seemed like it had to have been here forever. It turns out it was only open like 6 years.
Yeah, it kind of got to be an old man really quick.
Which is what you want.
It took on my sensibilities. I think my old man Darren kind of seeped into the wood floors really quick. But yeah, so it was just this like, so we're like, man, what do we do? Shit, like, how do we like, we were making some money. We're like, well, maybe we'll buy a piece of property or something like that, and like, just as a buffer, like, well, that'll be our fallback. Like,
when this thing goes under.
Yeah, it's just like, well, you can, it's like, well, if you're going to get a degree in poetry, what's your fallback going to be? And that's the whole thing. Like, well, if you're going to open a record store, what's your fallback going to be?
Yeah.
So, Northside was just kind of blooming a little bit, so we bought some stuff, and which has turned out great, and we just rent to, it's that whole 1 degree of the store.
Yeah.
We just rent to people we know, and now we kind of wrapped up all that, and all that's paid off and everything now, and kind of like, oh, okay, now I can work on this kind of stuff. This is the stuff I've always wanted to do, like, because if I didn't own a store, I probably would have, like, a primary research librarian or something like that, archivist or something.
No, it like reading a little bit more about the story that actually makes sense.
Yeah.
Like, and so like, let's get. I don't want to jump too far ahead.
Sure.
Who were you guys growing up? Like, why does your family say when you decide to open a record store in 1999? Why do they go? Oh, that makes sense.
My parents were always, one sad thing is our dad passed away maybe a couple months after we opened it, and he was like this hardworking, he's a teamster and like work hard and and be a fair dude, and and good things will happen and stuff like that, and he was always very supportive. I just remember him saying like, congratulations, that's great. I know you guys have been talking about this a long time. And I remember him saying, he's like, all right, well, you're going to be working 80, so you don't have to work 40.
Yeah.
And that's totally true. Like, it never stops, and so
what a great way to put it, though.
Yeah, but you're doing it for yourself, know, and so it really is. It's the hardest work you ever do, but it's not work at all.
Yeah.
It's exhausting. And, I worked at this shop last night till about 11, and then came back in at 7. And then,
but hopefully it's the place you'd want to be if you'd have known it.
Oh, God, yeah. it's my social life, know? And so, I don't really go out. I'm not that, it's because I do all my socializing during the day.
Yeah.
This is my 35th year of doing this. And so my week is also filled not just with the store, but like going to visit customers at nursing homes,
right,
and funerals, and all that kind of stuff. Like, it's
the relationships you've built over years and years.
So it's that whole kind of like it's literally like a generational thing now for me. Yeah. And going to weddings and all that kind of stuff. So that kid was in a stroller, and now I'm at his wedding. And so but like growing up, like our backyard was in Bridgetown, our front yard was in Dent, and like the side of the house was in Mac. Like it was just this. We just grew up in, we were kind of like right on the edge of like where Rybolt and Harrison is and all that stuff, like before it gets pretty farmy and stuff like that. And you're just these like West Side Catholic kids who like what I was telling you before, like buying some property and stuff like that. Like the whole thing was just like, got to pay them off, can't have debt, can't just that whole like
old
West
school,
Side, no debt, no nothing, all that kind of stuff. But it was just, it was we didn't grow up in a musical household. My dad loved the Mills Brothers, and just, and that was the most exposure to me. And so, I don't know, like, it wasn't an escape. It was just something that I think I almost felt really truly, like, you buy records and and it becomes, music at that time was, most kids used it as their identity,
Yeah.
And that's what you hung your hat on. And you're a punk rock kid or whatever, and that's kind of what I fell into. And, it was, I think, for me, like the world just exploded when I discovered, and I don't know how I stumbled across it, but I stumbled across WAIF.
Yeah.
And
Which, for people that don't know, is a Cincinnati radio station still broadcasting.
Yeah. And it was gospel and German and conjunto and punk rock and doo-wop.
And it still somehow is everything. Yeah.
And it really, and that was just insane. Like, I'm this white West Side kid of like, man, there's a whole lot going on in the world that I don't know anything about.
Yeah.
And so, which, to the point where, I was going to like the jockey club and, you get your fake ID and all that kind of stuff. And I mean, the first time you'd always hear, like, I didn't even have a fake ID. Like, I just heard that, the rumor was if you had any kind of ID, you could get in. So it was just like a faux show them the thing and they would stamp your hand. So the first time I went there, it was, and they're like, can I see an ID? And I'm like, yeah. I mean, I think I was 15 or something. And so I get out my Radio Shack Battery Club card and give it to them. They're like, all right, looks good. Doors are in the back if the cops come. And so, there was those kind of experiences. And then I can't remember who did the blues show on WAIF. It may have been Steve Tracy or something like that, but he was talking about the Sha Ra Lounge, which was like a throwdown juke joint over on Reading Road, which I think is now called like Sonny's or something like that.
Is that in Avondale or is it?
It's over on Reading, kind of over where the golf course is.
Okay.
And then there's that like little Army National Guard depot right over there. I think it's still there. But yeah, it's like in Avondale.
Yeah.
And
like Avondale meets Norwood.
Just a gravel parking lot with like a shack. I mean, aluminum foil stapled to the ceiling with like Christmas lights, nailed to the top. And I was like driving for 6 weeks and I went there, and I walk into there and I was like, and it was owned by a biracial couple and she sees me and just points to me and then points to a seat at the corner of the bar and just gave me a Pepsi.
That's fantastic.
And I saw Albert Washington that night and I was like,
oh my God.
Wow, holy crap. And Albert's probably my favorite Cincinnati singer.
Right on.
Cincinnati soul singer, without a doubt. And that was just kind of like a 16-year-old kid who has no business being there at all, being immersed into this thing and really seeing that like this music still exists.
Right.
And it's being played and loved and, and so that really kind of like opened my ears. And then just when I worked at Moles, I became friends with H. Bomb Ferguson and Big Joe, Duskin, and Pigmeat Jarrett. All those guys would just kind of circle and kind of round through there and stuff like that. So I got to know, those guys and things like that. And it just kind of made that stuff very personal. And so I just kind of fell in love with it. And that's really kind of what, that and locally at least with like the local music stuff. I still remember it was a Hank Ballard record and I was at Everybody's Records and I was flipping through the bins and there was just some reason why I picked it up and I flip it over and it says, King Records, Cincinnati, Ohio. I think I was maybe 13 or 14. It was like in a 99-cent bin or something like that. And I'm like, how can this be?
Right.
Because records either have to be made in LA or New York.
Yeah.
Those are the only options. And so that just opened the floodgates. And then set me down that rabbit hole.
And you just started following the King Records legacy?
Yeah, or just like, but then realizing like, that was like the first time like, oh, check for the address. And then falling in love with all this regional stuff and like, and then realizing like, like in our archives at the store, I think we have probably 250, maybe even a little more, just local labels. Just some of them are one-offs, and some put out 250 or 300 records.
Wow.
Some
Do you
are-
hunt that stuff down still, or do people bring it to you?
Yeah,
I read the story about you guys acquiring that catalog in 2016.
the big collection in Boston.
Yeah.
Most of that was like King and Federal stuff. There was a couple local things in there that we didn't have in our holdings, but we save all that stuff. We have a massive archive of just local stuff, file cabinets full of things, and and so that'll be the next thing. Like we just finished like the build out in the basement for the first kind of wave of all this stuff, and as we display stuff, it'll be digitized and put online and be in a database that can be researched. And sometimes it's a canceled check, sometimes it's a business card.
Wow.
It can be session logs or notes, business correspondence, legal documents, but it's just individually they're just like these little pieces of paper, but then as you start to kind of put it together, it begins to tell the story. And so and as we do the reissues, a lot of like the source material that we use for the packaging will be displayed and all that kind of stuff, whether it's master tapes or promotional photos or this or that and all that kind of stuff, and just trying to make bringing in like a visual element to this stuff, that it's like this stuff exists and here it is. It's not just
Right.
we just didn't pull it off the internet, or whatever, and
No, it's like
and try and fudge the watermark or whatever, you know what I mean? So,
An actual physical thing in the
this-
world.
Yeah, and again, that's just kind of that's the direction that we kind of want to head, and it's I really don't know any other stores that are kind of doing that.
I just certainly don't.
And that's kind of like I said, like if I wasn't doing this, that's what I would want to do.
Yeah.
So
Well, you are.
But yeah, exactly. But I didn't realize that that's what I was doing.
Right,
You know
right.
what I mean? Like, because somebody didn't tell me that that's what I was doing.
Yeah.
So it was, I don't know how it. Yeah, I think it really kind of dawned on me like when we started working on this card set, and I was like, oh, I got it. Oh no, I have like a file on Libby Holman stuff. Oh no, I have a complete file of this.
You don't have to go somewhere else.
Yeah,
Right.
and so like we're gonna do a display of these when it comes out down at the library, that walkway, that skywalk, and we'll just fill that whole thing with all the original drawings and the sketches and the source materials and notes and all that kind of
Wow.
stuff. And so I just think that stuff's really important in the manner that we just think that's like in this world of immediacy, like stuff just falls out of the sky done.
Yeah, right.
Like it's just like, why are CDs $12? Well, by the time we sell the first copy of a Wussy record, we're 40 grand in the hole.
Right,
You know
right.
what I mean?
Yeah.
That's why it's $12.
Yeah.
So
It's so interesting. So I was in radio for 15 years. I've done like artist management and stuff like that. There's the triangle of the
Yeah.
music industry.
Yeah.
There's the labels and the artists and
Yeah.
and radio and record stores. The fact that you guys are kind of all of those things.
for better or for worse,
Well-
half-ass in each of them equally.
Sort of whole-assing
Whole-assing
everything
it.
all together. But it's a pretty cool position to be in, because it seems like that's where a lot of the brokenness in the music industry is one of those things trying to take advantage of the other two.
Yeah.
And you guys are just sort of like, well,
Yeah.
let's do it all, and let's
Yeah.
do it all authentically
Yeah,
and
yeah.
not screw people.
Yeah.
And I just, the commitment over time to local music, to putting out stuff like Wussy and the Cow Slingers back in the
God,
day,
yeah.
and all of that kind of stuff.
I was looking at I was clearing out a bunch of files the other day, and I was looking at like these old shipping invoices from early on. And it was just like these like from Caroline Records one, and Choke, and like, we'll take 800, and you're just like, wow, I remember those days of like how easy it was to sell 3 or 4 or 5,000 copies of something,
Right.
you know, and now it's just like,
Doesn't happen.
yeah, you know, like we'll take 15, we'll take 12, we'll take,
yeah,
you know.
yeah.
I mean, we've slimmed it down to a thing where it's direct to consumer. There's probably like 80 stores that are into what we do. And then we do online, and then we do like one distributor that we use down in Birmingham, Alabama. So I'm not chasing bills and all that kind of stuff. And
Right.
And if you want to get our stuff, you can get it. You know, it's.
You're not doing returns and buybacks.
Oh my God, dealing with crack cases and this and that. Like it's all shipped one way and everything, and like, yeah, I'm not interested in that anymore. And it's just.
And maybe that's why, like, I don't know. What I thought we might talk a lot about, when I thought you guys had been around for forever and ever, was the transition through the Napster thing. And then when I started to do the research and realized that you opened in 99.
It was the height.
Yeah.
It literally was the height of Napster, exactly.
It's like you never had to figure that out because you just started in that model.
It was kind of a blessing in a way because it really made us work really hard and appreciate like every single sale.
Yeah.
But I knew that... you know, I should say we knew, my brother and I, who, you know, my business partner, Jim. I mean, we both knew that, like, there was X amount of people that were gonna stay physical. Mm-hmm. And I knew that LPs would still be around. I wasn't really expecting the resurgence that it's had, and I'm not sure what the legs are on that still.
Yeah.
Like, we're already starting to buy back collections
Really?
from kids. They're like, I'm not moving this stuff again.
Yeah.
There's no way. Man, I can put 85,000 songs in my pocket.
Right.
You know, I'm on the 3rd floor of a dorm at UC. I'm not doing this anymore, you know. So
Not a huge collection.
So, you know, it's great. We get it coming and going, you know, but
sell it to them, buy it back.
exactly,
sell
we buy it
somebody else.
back, exactly. So, but you know, so it's kind of interesting, like in a world of convenience, like, all right, just what is going to be your commitment to this format and stuff like that. So, and as I've grown older, I've slimmed down, you know, like you know, like I don't even know what I have no idea how many records I got at home, but outside of stuff that I collect that has a local interest, you know, my personal collection, like it doesn't grow anymore. Like if I take something home, I bring something back, and there's really not a lot of fat on that wall anymore. Like it's all pretty good stuff, and
stuff you're actually listening to.
Yeah. And, you know, or something like I have this for this reason, or, you know, whatever, what that's a historic recording or, you know, interesting pressing or something like that. But like the local stuff and the regional stuff continues to like grow, you know. I mean, there's like 2 things that came in yesterday that I've never seen. Really? Terrible country 45s. But like, you know, but it's interesting. Like
part of the story, part of the fabric.
It's all part of the thing. You know what I mean? And like, you do get that call from so-and-so, and Uncle Jesse died, and he put out a 45 on ARC in 1963, and we want to play it at his funeral. Wow. You know, and that's happened more than once, you know, so, you know.
And you have it.
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
Did,
you know, so.
Did you talk to Yemi for the Queen City Kings thing?
Yeah.
I don't know if you've seen, like...
I've seen some of it. I don't think... I tend to use... I've been pretty good this morning, but I tend to use a lot of profanity in my speech. So I'm sure a lot of my stuff wasn't useful.
You don't need to censor yourself for this.
A lot of my stuff wasn't too useful.
Well, it's funny because it seems like both of you, he's found himself becoming a historian, which is not what he set out to do, but like chasing some of this stuff down, like negotiations with the Country Music Hall of Fame to go into the archive and all of that. Yeah. And the stories that he was telling, some like on the record and some off the record.
Oh, yeah.
About like, you know, the guy who owns all the rights to the unreleased James Brown stuff who just doesn't want to ever put it out.
Oh, yeah. I know. I mean, we've kind of stopped trying to even pursue that stuff.
Yeah.
And just go after local guys who own their own publishing and mechanical rights.
Yeah.
You know, who made a record, never put it out, or who made a record and did 300 copies, and that's it.
Yep.
You know, and so... And our deal, like we do the stuff with Larry Goshorn and the Sacred Mushroom and all that stuff, and we just 50-50 done.
Right on.
You know, there's your check, there's your done, you know, all that kind of stuff. So, and it's just so easy, you know, and trying to negotiate. I mean, we are in the process of finishing the licensing on a bunch of stuff with Ace, who now owns the publishing rights and the mechanicals for Fraternity Records, which was like the runner-up to King.
Okay.
And they owned.
Was that Cincinnati?
It was all Cincinnati stuff. Yeah, I mean their big thing that they had. Their big success was the casinos and Lonnie Mac. That was their big thing. And then the rest of it they did. But they also did a bunch of really good girl group stuff.
Okay.
So we're doing a series of girl group reissues, the Teardrops, the Charmaines, the Tua Clubs, the first Jackie DeShannon, all that kind of stuff. And we're negotiating with Ace, and that's not that big of a deal because they're a small independent in the UK. They get it. It's not like, but you still, like one of my favorite label in Cincinnati is Finch Records, John Finch, and he was down on Spring Grove Avenue, and I was looking up a friend of mine in the phone book back in the day when you would use a phone book, and his name was John French, and I'm like looking at it, and I just see, I'm going down the line, and I'm just like, Finch Publishing,
Right
Finch
there.
Music Publishing. I was like, there is no way that's still there. I picked up the phone and I called. This old black guy answers, and I'm like, is this, yeah. And I was like, what? And then I kind of recalled, I was like, oh, I remember this guy. I remember him coming in the moles, like selling H-Bomb records and stuff like that. And I was like, John, man, this stuff's just like, I would love to do it, it's like the Bees and Albert Washington, early H-Bomb Ferguson. The gospel stuff is amazing. The black doo-wop stuff and the black vocal group stuff is just incredible. He put out a record with a band called the Wutsits, which was the only white band on it. But they only knew one song. And so they did
That's a short record.
a version of Marvin Gaye's The Stubborn Kind of Fellow, fast on the A side and then slow on the B side.
Seriously?
So, yeah. And they were like from like Maysville, Kentucky or something like that. But John and I finally kind of had an agreement, and he had been ripped off a lot. A lot of that stuff had been bootlegged and stuff like that, and he was pretty bitter about it. And we kind of had this agreement, and then he had a stroke. And it was just like done. And then the family's just like, well, if you want to do it, everything must be worth $1 million.
Right.
I'm like, it's not worth $1 million.
Yeah.
And I was just like, all right, I'm not going to fight this. And since then, most of it's been bootlegged and stuff like that. But the story wasn't told, and that's kind of sad,
Right.
Because it was a fascinating, it was a barber, and then he would record these amazing records in the barber shop after hours with a microphone hanging from the ceiling.
Crazy.
And a 4-track in the corner. You can hear like the floor squeak on some of those records. Like, it's incredible,
Wow.
And so, but it is what it is, onward and upward and all that kind of stuff. So
Yeah, but it's like that story. I mean, I was just talking to somebody, I forget. Sorry, I've had a cold and my brain is not fully on. For one of the most recent episodes, and we were just basically, it was Julia in the last episode. We were saying both of us are transplants to Cincinnati.
Oh, okay.
And both
Where
of
are you
us,
from originally?
I'm from Idaho.
Oh,
like,
okay.
Way out
All right.
west.
Great.
And the
That's
idea that, like, before moving to Cincinnati, she said that her business partner, Stuart, down at Sundry and Vice, he said, Cincinnati's like lettuce if you don't live here.
Oh,
Which
yeah.
is,
No, I agree with you. Yeah,
it
totally.
just doesn't have,
Yeah.
there's no sense of flavor.
Yeah.
And then you move here, and there's all this amazing history that nobody outside of this city knows about. And so much of it is musical and arts. And nobody's telling, that's why I was so happy to talk to Yemi. It's like nobody's telling the story, but so much of American culture doesn't exist without the stuff that came out of Cincinnati.
It's lettuce, the Klan putting a cross on Fountain Square for Christmas, or like Maplethorpe.
Yeah,
Those
right.
are the things.
Right.
And so, but you're like, well, but I think sometimes we just let that kind of eat away at us.
Yeah.
And that we let that kind of be our own identity. And
Sort of an underdog thing? Like,
yeah. And so, and I think it just kind of got like enough already.
Yeah.
Like, that's whatever. And the thing is, it's just like any other city, or not like any, but like most cities, the core is like liberal and democratic, and the outsides are conservative and whatever. So, and that's Cincinnati, through and through. And so, I always kind of like, we had moved away and I would come back like every 2 months or something like that, and you know, check on. We never sold our house and kept our house, and check on the other properties and do stuff and things like that. But and family and things. But it was this slow momentum over the course of those like last 6 or 7 years of like won't, you know, and so which has been exciting. You know, I hope it becomes more and more inclusive.
Yeah.
You know, like it's, you know, I see it, but
What do you mean, like how the story's told?
no, I'm saying like Cincinnati still has like one of the highest child mortality rates in the United States. You know, it's still, we got a great bar
Just
district
the
downtown.
city itself.
But then we got to, you know, spread this
not an
around a little
integrated
bit
city,
too.
yeah.
So, you know, we need to work on those issues too. And those are, you know, being the husband of a high school principal, you know, in the public schools, Cincinnati public schools. I mean, I see the need for, you know, all that kind of stuff. And so, you know, so that's what is going to make the city great.
Yeah.
It's not just, you know, a ton of really great bars and
Right.
place where you can go throw out acts and drink bourbon, you know, which is cool, but you know,
That's not going to turn around the foundations.
Yeah. And so, you know, I think that's, you know, hopefully that'll be, you know, I don't want to say a trickle down or whatever, but like somehow that gets into, and how that works, I have no idea. Like how that public policy gets taken from the success of a city, I don't know, you know. And so it's this, you know, it's not just a Cincinnati problem, it's a national problem, you know. And so
it's such a weird thing for Cincinnati though. Like I used to work for an ad agency downtown, and one of the things that I got assigned to do is when we were trying to hire somebody from out of town and convince them why they would want to live here, I'd drive them around and give them a tour because I was a transplant. I was interested in the history. And ultimately I would end up telling them like Cincinnati, and I think I read this in a weird Sports Illustrated article, but that it's like a city defined by its contradictions.
Absolutely.
Northernmost southern city in the United States, or southernmost northern city.
Without
you know,
a doubt,
the city that represented freedom.
Exactly.
You know, to slaves trying to get across the river, but a city that's heroes have been notorious racists.
Yeah, battling its demons and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, that it's all
an
of
American
that stuff.
city.
That's exactly right. It may be the most American city for all those reasons, and it seems like so much of the legacy of the beauty of Cincinnati is a black story that like white Cincinnati has wanted to pave over the top of. That's still here, like just right below the surface.
Oh no, yeah.
And you got people like the Finch Records guy who are just like forgotten and left behind. Nobody's wanted to ever actually really do anything with the King Records site, or the people that have just haven't tried hard enough. It's been a political tool.
I'm not a team player, you know, at all. So I kind of keep my nose clean on a bunch of that stuff. It seems like there's momentum to it, but
it does
like
now.
I just, man, Jesus, sitting in meetings and like figuring out, and that's kind of like I was like, we got all this really cool stuff. We should put it out for people to see.
Yeah,
you know, like, you know, amazing files of legal documents of like, you know, Hank Ballard not getting his full rate on the Chitlin circuit and this and that, and just all kinds of just, you know, insane stuff, cool stuff.
I love that though, because like while everybody else is talking about making a monument out of King Records, you're building a monument in the basement of ShakeIt.
Just like, there you go. Here it is.
Yeah, you got all the stuff.
a question, let me know. You know, I mean, I would love to do. I mean, the other part of like this whole thing is like this card series will also be, we're making posters for all these that'll go into like public schools and Cincinnati, and like the music programs and stuff like that. So, and so it's just kind of like, I have no interest at all in, and I don't think most people do. Like, most of the things that I care about music-wise or history-wise or whatever it is, like 2% of the population cares about. And so, it's like King Records this, King Records that, all that kind of stuff. I don't want to read another article on it. I don't want to do whatever. But like the whole approach with this card project is like, here's this cool, visually pleasing thing, and here's 80 words on it. And this is why it's cool.
Yeah.
And this is why it's cool. Libby Holman, the first It Girl. She invented the strapless dress. She was an early torch singer. She broke racial barriers with Josh White. She funded Martin Luther King to go study nonviolence techniques with Gandhi in India. 2 of her husbands were mysteriously murdered, one at a party at her house that night. And then and then MLK is assassinated, Robert F. Kennedy is assassinated, and Malcolm X is assassinated, and JFK is assassinated. She goes into this deep depression, just turns on the car, puts a hose in her mouth, and kills herself.
Oh my God.
And it's just kind of like her biography. Every page is just, bisexual. She would, seduce the wives of like major industrialists and all this kind of stuff. Like, just like, man, this is insane. She's like Cincinnati. It's just kind of
wow.
like, so yeah, it's just like, yeah, she's probably one of my like favorites of like. You just kind of, I think I've read that book 4 times, and every time it's just like, man, why has nobody done a movie on her?
Right.
Yeah, it's just incredible. So, but, my thing with this is like, I think people are done with full cover stories in the Inquirer.
Yeah.
Here's 80 words,
Right.
This might hip you to something like, it's just like, so you can utter a sentence on it or something.
Well,
like
and
that.
I love the idea that, like, the Inquirer story is not going to reach the kids who are going to come into your shop, who are actually going to decide to do something with their lives. That's going to impact how the story gets brought back.
Yeah, exactly. And then, getting these in like, Union Terminal gift shop and like the touristy places and stuff like that.
Totally.
And like, oh, cool, that's kind of cool.
Getting that story out.
And getting it out to, beyond the city and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So, so it's just, I don't even know how the hell we went down that street, but.
So, to the idea of work, because it's, you talked about, you guys came from a pretty working class background.
Very working class.
Yeah.
We were talking the other day about, at the shop about, I remember our dad making us walk the picket line with him.
Really?
Oh, yeah. And when the Teamsters went on strike. And
how old?
I was in 2nd grade, so my brother was probably in 5th. And it was over a course of a week or whatever. And I remember going and, around the barrel.
Yeah.
With the firewood in it and stuff like that, and holding the sign and all that kind of stuff. And doing it through, like, I went in at like 4 a.m. Like, my dad's time was like 4 a.m. to noon. So you went, 8-hour shift or whatever. And so, we're out there in Sharonville outside a yellow freight system, because he worked in the trucking industry. And, doing our thing and all that kind of stuff. And then my mom sending in a note to school saying he was absent because, he was on the picket line or whatever that day with his dad. And them sending a note home saying that wasn't an acceptable thing.
I'm sorry, this is not an approved excuse.
And so I gave it to my dad, who worked nights. And he would come home at like 5 a.m. And then that was kind of like my time with him. And then a little bit after school. And I said, hey, Dad, I got this unexcused absence form. He's like, all right, give me the note or whatever. And so I'm at school, and my desk was next to the window. And, I'm kind of, just staring, like daydreaming, looking out the window. And I see my dad's 1968 Ford Galaxy 500 coming into the parking lot and just parked haphazardly across like 9 spaces, and gets out of the car, walks in there for like 2 seconds, walks back out, shuts the door, leaves. And then like 8 minutes later, I get this envelope from the office. They're like, you can go home and take that to your parents. And they're like, for an excuse of absence.
There you go.
So that was
Wow.
that was the working class environment that we
Yeah.
grew up in, you know. So
But it didn't make you like he at the same time was not. You got to follow in my footsteps with that.
meaning what exactly?
But just like how do you get from that background to you guys like opening a record store? Like it's
I
a
think-
completely in my mind maybe it's not a completely
Yeah.
different view of work.
I think it was just honest work, honorable work.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he did. I mean, he kind of like when we thought about it once. He worked for one company his entire life.
Yeah.
He started with like Consolidated Freight, which was literally right down here on the first company he worked for was right down here on the corner of Spring Grove and Crawford, and right by Spring Grove Cemetery. And it was a local trucking firm.
It's like
And
half
then-
a mile from where we are right now.
yeah. And then that got bought by Consolidated Freight. And then he went into the Army, came home, went back to Consolidated Freight, then they got bought by Yellow Freight System, worked for Yellow Freight System, and then they got bought by Roadway. And then, you know.
And he was there the whole time.
And he was there the whole time. You know, and it was that whole thing of like, you know, when he got sick at the end, and, you know, with my mom and stuff like that, like, it sucked not having him, but at the same time, you know, my mom gets her, you know, he was loyal to the company. That's what he did. Although, again, at the store the other day, I couldn't get this tape started. Like, God damn it, I'm just trying to get this packing tape thing. Like, it's so frustrating. And I was like, remember how Dad used to complain about the tape that he stole from work, saying it was so cheap, you know? Like, it's like, you can steal a little bit. You know, like, but no. So, anyway, no, he was a good guy. He was very honest and whatever. But you know, that has trickled down to us. Like, you know, we always offered health insurance, and everybody has a IRA, a 401k at
Wow.
the store. I mean, we're a little tiny record store, and we had health insurance for everybody up until, I guess it was 2 years ago, when we were kind of like. It kind of made sense that like everybody could just go on the spouses and like all that kind of stuff. It's like, oh, well, it's going to be cheaper that way. And like it was just during that whole upheaval moment and stuff like that.
Yep.
So, but you know, so everybody's had health insurance and they get their matching 401k plan, and you know, we have a fiduciary that they can call and ask financial questions to and figure it out and all that kind of stuff. And I mean, that's kind of why, I mean, we've been there for 20 years. We've had 5 employees, you know.
Seriously.
Billy's been there for 18 years. Joe's been there for 16 years. Travis has been there for 10. And Taryn is the only one that's ever left, and she was there for 14 years and became a nurse. So,
That's
yeah.
crazy.
So it's just kind of like, all right, treat them with respect.
Right. Take
I mean,
care
the
of
whole
people.
deal is just like, you're an adult. You know, like, I'm hiring you to be a professional, do a professional job. You don't have to act like a professional, just do a professional job. Like, I'm hiring you mainly because of your personality and your, you know, and in your knowledge of music and stuff like that, in your enthusiasm and just like, you know, like, just do what you know you're supposed to do, and it's going to be awesome.
Yeah.
So that's kind of been my hiring
It
philosophy.
doesn't seem like rocket science.
It doesn't
but
seem like
you
rocket
would
science,
think so.
but it's worked really well. You know, like it's
No, but
Yeah.
I when I was 22, I worked at a bakery for a couple of years. Maybe the best job I've ever had. For this couple in Idaho, they had hourly employees that were making $9 an hour who'd worked for them for 14 years.
yeah.
Because they took care of them. They found out I was riding my bike to school or to work through the winter. I was
Yep.
doing it to save money because I'd sold my car, and they offered me their second car for the winter.
Wow.
Like they cared about the
Yeah,
people
yeah.
that were there,
Yeah.
and you know,
Yeah. No, and it's not hard to do.
no,
You know what I mean? It's
you
not,
actually have to care because it,
Yeah, and you have to also you have to be human about it.
yeah,
And you also have to, there's maybe subconsciously, it's, you know, like Taryn got sick and she had cancer, and she had to move home for a bit. We always kept her on the payroll and all that kind of stuff, and she could keep her health care, and that wouldn't be interrupted. And we basically just kind of like paid her a stipend to keep her on the thing. And then Travis, he had a son who was young and passed away and was sick, and our thing with him was just like, you just come and go as you want. If you just need to like decompress and be in the store, if you don't, then don't. Like whatever. And so it's always been this kind of very fluid thing, and so but it's also, if somebody let me be in that fluid workplace, I would give them my all.
Yeah.
And so I think that they give us their all. And so it's just as when I moved, and I had no concerns about it at all, because I knew that those guys would step up. And me and my brother said, well, we're not hiring anybody new. Like, we're just all going to suck it up and do it. And everybody just sucked it up and did it. And so that's it. I mean, I did online stuff and mail order and label stuff and, all the publishing aspects of the label and things like that. So I did that. But, the day-to-day operations of the store were just kind of like, all right, no, we're going to do this too. So, and it was fine, And honestly, they probably made more money when I was gone than when I was there, because I'm the one that always has like the crazy ideas of like, we should do this, we should do that. Just never make any money. So, they're fun, but nobody really cares.
But that's what gives the store its personality and its vibe.
Yeah. So I think, that's kind of like, I think, when you ask like, how did his work experience affect ours, I think that's probably what it was, of just like seeing him being loyal, my mom not having to worry about things, and us trying to do the same thing in a very small scale, just like, and I have no interest in trying to change the world, but I'll try and change the 1 degree of people around me. Right. And that's all I can do, So, and if you can get that person that you treated nicely to do that 1%, and do that 1% and do that, instead of like these grandiose kind of.
I think a lot of people get stuck in the inertia of feeling like they can't change the world, and then don't try to change the things they can.
Yeah. Because, I mean, how do you even do that?
Yeah. Well, I talked to Kelly Dolan. She works for Engaged Partners, tech consulting firm, and we were talking about like, why do people not in these big companies? Why are they screwing everybody? Why are they taking advantage of everybody? And she said it comes down to, like, it was just the golden rule. It comes down to treat people like you want to be treated.
Yeah.
And eventually, everything that you've talked about, there's all of the policies and all the stuff that you guys have done. You could have done something else. There may have been a point where your accountant says, yeah, but if you don't offer them insurance, you're going to take home this many more dollars a year and put it into your pocket.
Yeah.
And somebody else makes a different decision with that.
I don't even know how much money I make until my accountant gives it to me, which I don't know if that's good or bad, because I get my little paycheck, I get my paycheck, and I take my like $40 that I live on for the week, which I don't even use, and then so it doesn't even, like, that part doesn't,
You're not
know what I mean?
Thinking about it that way.
The money isn't the motivator, you know what I mean? It's just kind of like, it's the...
You didn't open a record store in 1999 to make huge
it
amounts of dollars?
No. So, I mean, definitely some things have, worked out. And I mean, I think more about like the, like when my brother and I bought some property, it was more about, that was like our insurance policy.
Yeah.
It's like, people are going to need a place to live. All right, that's what we're going to do, And then the store will be like our joy, and that's what
Yeah.
we do, and that's our lifeblood and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, it was that whole like, what are you going to leave your kids? I'm
Right.
not going to leave them a record store, but maybe I'll leave them a piece of property or something like that. But or who the hell knows? But it was always so much about, I think just like in the last year, we always thought about the future, and now it's just kind of like, oh, we should start thinking about like today and tomorrow and this and and just kind of like, I don't know if that was just like, how old are you?
47.
All right, so you're not. I just turned 50.
Uh-huh.
And it really kind of was like, whoa, holy shit.
Here I am.
Yeah, I'm like, all right, well, average life expectancy is and you're like, okay, so, and that's really kind of what has lit a fire under my ass to be like, because these are always things that I've wanted to do, and I'm like,
time is now.
Yeah, time is now. These guys are dying.
Yeah.
And I've taken care of enough business that I can get a little cushion,
right,
and I can work on these things and do this, and it satisfies me in a work atmosphere, and I think people appreciate it, and they'll be like, "Oh, that's cool. I didn't know about that."
Yeah.
I mean, like when we did that first compilation of like, it was called "Play Me Back to George Street," which was a compilation of blues stuff from Cincinnati from the 20s and 30s. People were like, "What the fuck?" Like, because again, everybody thinks it starts in, 1948 with King Records, and and my thing now is just like, I'm trying to like track down all of these like wax cylinder recordings from like the 1890s for the Ohio Phonograph Company, which was the first recording company in Cincinnati in the 1890s, and so, that's my big thing.
You're tracking down actual cylinders?
Yeah, just like old wax cylinders and stuff like that. And just like, I said, I just want to,
Where do you find that stuff?
Oh my God. I mean, there's like collectors groups, and, you get on you want to explore a sick world of minutia. Get on some of those boards, man, like wax cylinder boards and Edison collectors and stuff like that. Like, oh, like crap, man. Like it's like getting on a Northern Soul board. But yeah, so I mean, it's just kind of like trying to find stuff that is like acceptable enough for the modern ear, and historically reissuing it.
Yeah.
And but you have to package it in a way of just like, this isn't perfect, and there's crackling on it.
Yeah.
But like, you're gonna hear it here, or you're never gonna hear it. And this is a really fascinating part of the city,
right on.
And so, so I'm just trying to like source these things now and figure it out. Trying to get, that's like when we did the blues comp, trying to get like, there were different variations of different compilations of Cincinnati and Midwest and stuff, but trying to piece together like the best source and all that stuff. But people were like, whoa, holy shit. I didn't know this existed, you know?
Yeah.
And these guys some of them were very, very prolific, 8 and 10, releases and stuff like that. So, so I mean, just that whole like turning, like it really, I did not, at 49 and 11 months, I was one thing. And at 50 in 1 month, I was like, whoa.
Really?
All right.
Something kicked over.
Yeah, there was just something that like, and I don't know. Like,
how much of that was like you feeling like you were old enough to sort of tell a story? You know what I mean? Like to have perspective. Do you know what I mean?
Like, I think that's a good question. I think maybe it was, now I can tell this story, and I need to make time to tell it. And enough of like the day-to-day stuff's kind of taken care of that I have had time to do it, but I just didn't realize I had time to do it. So, and now I'm going to make time. I'm not even going to make time. I'm just going to do it.
Yeah.
So, and it's, that's pretty label and time. I mean, like this afternoon, I'm meeting with a friend who's like a back-end computer kind of program, like trying to figure out like this database of like, how do you make things searchable? And like, is there,
Right.
you know, how, like if somebody's looking for like, whatever, you know, pick anything, you know what I mean? And so how do they find it? Like,
Right,
and
right.
How can we source that and bring it to them, you know?
You're planning to have all of that online? And
Yeah. And it'll be
Crazy.
like, you know, it's not all going to go up in like 2 weeks or whatever. But, you know, as we do stuff and as I have time, you know, there's still like the day-to-day stuff that has to be done at the store, or that stuff doesn't happen.
Yep.
But, I mean, it'll be years of doing that stuff.
Yeah.
You know, and then just trying to figure out like, you know, like just, you know, putting it out for people to either take advantage of it or not. But it's not doing any good sitting in a file.
Yeah.
So put it
Yep.
out there in the world. So
Yeah.
So-
Do you work with, it reminds me, do you know Paul Mahern from Bloomington?
Man, I know that.
He was in the Zero Boys and...
Does he work at IU?
Yeah.
He's an
archivist.
Yeah.
He's also a recording engineer and like produces records over at Echo Park and whatnot, but he was doing music archiving work.
Yeah, I actually did talk to
digitizing
him
stuff.
once because I called, because there's like an unpublished autobiography of like Ralph Bass that they have in their archives there that, and he was like the producer of, he owned Federal Records, which was part of King
Yep.
and all that kind of stuff. And he was like the blackest white dude, like imaginable. And I got to meet him once and spend an afternoon with him in Chicago. And that was fascinating. But and then I caught wind of like that there was a thing there. And
Yeah, IU had a big thing. I don't know if they're still doing
they have
it.
a huge, they have a whole book imprint and all that kind
Right.
of stuff on American music history and stuff like that. So,
Yeah.
But yeah, so I think, you know, just trying to figure out like how do you do this properly,
Right.
and what's the right way to do it. And a friend of mine she was the head librarian up at DAP, and you know I've been trying to pick her brain on it of
Right on.
like how do you do this,
Yeah.
like to do it right, and it's not just half-assed or not just pictures that are up,
Yep.
like
Yep.
so like are there codes and like do you know like
What a cool project.
yeah so it'll keep me off the streets for a little bit, so
I suppose that's good.
keep me.
So we talked about like your dad and your relationship to work. What are your kids? How many kids do you have?
2.
What do you think what are they picking up about work from you? Either
well-
intentionally or otherwise?
Well, it's definitely like, you know, my wife was like probably the hardest working person that I know, and grew up in a single mother household. And she was a potter and sold pottery on the streets in Ann Arbor, Michigan. And so
I guess if you're going to do it somewhere, Ann Arbor might be the place.
that might be the joint,
to
you
do
know, and just, yeah, the smartest person I know, the hardest working person I know, the most compassionate person I know.
Your wife was a potter, or her mom was?
Her mom was,
Okay.
yeah.
Because she's
And,
a principal.
yeah.
Okay.
And so, and has been a lifelong educator, and you know, she's been like a waitress at Bill Knapp's, a teacher, and a principal. Those are her things, you know, like that's her thing. And
Yeah.
she can drive a forklift. She has a forklift license. But
Good skills around
you
the
know,
schoolyard.
I think it's just like, you know, like you're gonna make your way, and you're gonna work, and we've kind of already told them like, you know, we're saving money for your 529s. We're gonna help you out and all that kind of stuff, and but you're also gonna participate in your you know,
a stake in it.
education, and you're gonna put a stake in it and all that kind of stuff. And so I think jointly there's no mixed messaging at all in our household of like, I mean, my oldest comes and works at the shop. My youngest, you know, she's 11 and she loves, like, she's getting ready to take her Red Cross certification for babysitting and all that kind of stuff. And so, I mean, we're kind of like a small business household,
Yeah,
you know what
yeah.
I mean? So
Right.
that's what you do. And like, and,
Right.
and you know, and I think with my oldest, she's a super smart kid, and she's looking at like looking into applying to like the military academies.
Okay.
She wants to get an engineering degree, like aerospace engineering, and it's like, you know, it's the Naval Academy and the Air Force Academy.
Wow. Underachiever.
Yeah. I mean, like I tell her, I said, you know, you need to thank your mother every day because does not come from my side of the family. Like just be happy. So, but very driven, and it's interesting for her to see the elements of service involved with that. And so, like, we did not. I mean, my wife is her parents were total hippies, and just Ann Arbor scene, hanging out with the MC5 and all that, like literally.
Yeah.
And that kind of whole thing. And then my dad was in the Army. He liked it, actually. He said it gave him a lot of structure. He didn't have the best growing up and stuff like that. So I remember him telling me, he was like, yeah, they say go dig this ditch, and in exchange for that, you got a bed, 3 meals, and you're off on the weekends. It's like, sounds good to me, man. I'll do that. So, but with my oldest, I think it's interesting for her to hear her kind of talk a little bit about that, of like
about the idea of the military.
Yeah, and just, I mean, she's 15. She's gonna be 16 here in a little bit, but seeing her mind kind of work through this, of just like, not in her words so much, but I'm joining the industrial military complex in exchange for shooting shit to Mars and figuring that stuff out, or studying
and
like
education, huge opportunities.
Trying to do cool stuff.
Yeah.
And we went to a couple of like these, because I mean these application process to get into one of these military academies are insane.
Yeah.
You have to start so early and to get all this stuff together. And I was talking to this woman, and she was like an early attendee of West Point, like within the first 100 women to go there at one of these like kind of like question and answer sessions.
Right.
And I was talking to her after it, and I said, so what's your whole take on this, and stuff like that. And she's like in her 60s now. She's getting ready to retire. And she said, well, I grew up in like, I don't even remember the town, but she like had to drive to Portsmouth, Ohio, to go to the recruiting office. But she said like in her high school, it was the community college flyer and the Army college, or the Army flyer.
Yeah.
And those were her college options.
Yep.
And so, and she said, well, my brother went to community college and he's a fuck up and a drug addict. So I'm going to go to the Army. So she went there and she met this, the person like, you're really smart and you might want to, I will be more than happy to help you, figure this out if you want to try. So she ends up getting into West Point. And she said, I got like one of the best educations you can get in the world. And she said, as it developed, I really found that there is that part that I rationalized out over time of like, I joined this, the military and, all that baggage that goes with it. But she said, the last 40 years of my life, I've been a civil engineer. And I have worked on projects that are too big for the private sector and they have to be public. Yep. And so I've worked on saving watersheds in upper state New York, and I've done this. And like, she just went down this whole bullet point of like...
the kind of stuff you never would have had the impact.
Yeah, and so she's like, I have done a lot of great things for this country because of that. But it started off there, but I ended up here. Yeah. And so... and I think maybe, my daughter kind of has a little bit of that kind of like, what is the service down the road? What is the whatever, and all that kind of stuff.
No, that's a great perspective. I certainly wouldn't have thought about.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of fascinating, And then she was just like, yeah, you walk out with an engineering degree from West Point, anybody's going to hire you.
Yeah.
And then there's that, you just have to do your years of service to pay back the, the $250,000 education that they give you. So. Yeah. But, you're going to get shot at or whatever, or, like...
I hope you don't...
So how's that going to work?
Cross paths with a dangerous time in history.
Yeah. Like right now, But, so it's interesting to kind of see her start to figure that stuff out. She has a good work ethic for like a 15-year-old, which is just like, like any 15-year-old. But, I have no concerns about them, Like, right I think they'll find their own paths and their own joys and be happy, and so
Yeah, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, totally. I hear you. I've got a 17-year-old.
Yeah, so it's
Yeah.
it could go to hell any day.
It always feels like that. The last thing I wanted to ask you about, I was in the shop a couple of weeks ago, and we were talking just briefly about that scene from Almost Famous, where his sister takes off and she leaves him the records and says, listen to side one of Tommy and it'll change your life.
Yeah.
I was telling you, my friend Mike Helm had that experience with that record. Like, how does that happen now? Do you see music with Spotify? And my son is listening. Like, it's really interesting because he's got headphones on all day. He almost missed the bus to school this morning because he had to run back up and get his headphones, and he has music going on. And it's he listens to music in such a completely different way. In that he's always got like his it's not even his Discover Weekly or whatever.
It's just the white noise of the world.
But he's hearing new things every single day. I can't stump him. I can't say, have you heard this? And have him not only say, yes, but it's not as good as this, and recite me half of the lyrics to the song. But there's not necessarily like a single moment where I would say like he listens, he puts the needle down on Tommy and the world opens before his eyes. Like, what's the difference in how you see people listening to music now, and like how you see your role in that, or the store's role?
I mean, you were in the industry and different facets and stuff like that, so like it changes every 20 minutes. There's a change, and so it's very interesting for me, and it's a little heartbreaking that people don't follow their instincts. And I don't know if it's just that I can't take a chance, kind of like even with buying a record. And is that like this trickle down effect of like, you got to wear a bike helmet, you can never take a chance, you have to do whatever, like just all that kind of stuff.
Don't screw it up, don't buy a bad record, don't waste your money.
It's a $4 record, and something in your brain said, that looks cool. Get out my phone, I'm gonna check it, see. No, it's $4.
Yeah.
Go with your gut. And so, and there are things that I can pinpoint to that, it's the loss of serendipity. Which, not just with music, but like life experience of just like whatever, being in a bookstore and like
allowing things to surprise you.
Exactly. And allowing things to surprise you, and like letting that path dictate you for a little bit. Because every time, we pick up our phone or, type something in our computer, our search fields get more and more and more and more and more narrow. Like
things get more curated.
Yeah. And so the, being like, like being at Mole's Records and being in the back room, the 99-cent room, and buying a record from a guy named Eddie Hinton, who was like a white soul dude. And I pick it up, it's called and I had this is no lie, I had a conversation in the store yesterday with a guy from Gloucester, Massachusetts for an hour about Eddie Hinton. Like, we just bonded over it. It was like a total man crush on each other. But I picked, I buy this record, it's called Very Extremely Dangerous. And I'm like, and I was a punk rock kid. I'm like, why did I buy this record? Like, whatever. But there's something about it. So I just buy it, take it home, listen to it. I'm like, man, this is pretty fucking cool. Like, and I kind of had dabbled in R&B and like just the heavy hitters, the Stax stuff, the Motown, all that kind of stuff. I put this record on, I was like, man, this dude sounds like Otis Redding. Holy crap, this is great. And I'm like, man, this is really cool. He only put out one record. And so, but he was a huge session guy. So like I'm flipping through like my brother's issue of like Rolling Stone magazine. There's a picture of Boss Skaggs with his band. And then underneath the white guy is the name Eddie Hinton. And I'm like, well, they must have got the names mixed up because the black guy's standing next to the white guy, and I know Eddie Hinton's black because he sounds like a black guy.
Right.
And then you're like, all right, well, there's that. And then you see his name like on a Dusty Springfield record. And then you see his name on a Toots and the Maytals record. And then you see his name. And you're slowly kind of piecing this stuff together. You can't Google it, and 40 seconds later, you know everything there is to know about it. So there's this slow burn appreciation of you slowly absorbing this stuff. And through that, like Donnie Fritz, Dan Penn. Oh, Dan Penn wrote that great song for, James Carr. Oh, James Carr. Oh, okay, that's Goldwire. Okay, there. So it was just this whole
liner notes.
Oh my God, liner notes, man, and just like slowly, and not just liner notes, but like even before compilations, like piecing together publishing and songwriting credits and record labels and like
following musicians across.
Oh Jesus, man! It was like it was a full-time job, and so that, because I wasn't able to Google him and find out everything I want to know about him in a minute and a half on Wikipedia, I've had this 40-year, 35-year fascination with this guy that culminates yesterday in the store with Tony from Gloucester, Massachusetts, over Eddie Hinton, you know?
Right.
And so, and so there is that, like, just slow down.
Yeah.
And man, if I could figure out a way to like send out like a static signal that would shut off your cell phone in the store, so just like go with your instincts or whatever, man, I would totally do that. But like, but then there's like just these like, and I'm not saying that it's right or wrong. It's just like, it is what it is. And that's kind of how it works. And like my, Francine, my oldest, man, she knows tons about music, but it's just kind of like, who the hell is that?
Yeah.
And it's like, these people don't even have records. They just have digital stuff, and all that kind of stuff. And so, but she loves, Jonathan Richman, but she also loves Cardi B. And like, it's just like, it's, all of her friends want to work at the store, but she doesn't, because that's what Dad does, because it must suck then. You know what I mean? Like, you don't want to do what your dad does. So, but, so there's that. And then there was, there's just like a, we were talking a week or two ago, like, what was the first concert that you waited in line to for tickets?
Right on.
And I was like, man, I stood out in Shillitoe's in like November to get Billy Idol tickets at the Cincinnati Gardens or whatever, like freezing our ass off, Yeah. And so now it's just like click, click, click.
Right.
All right, I got them, And
Totally.
so, so I think there's, I was straightening stuff in the basement a month or two ago, and I've been slowly just kind of selling off records, and like, I got the reissue. I don't need the original.
It's out of your personal collection?
Yeah. And just kind of like, the music is important to me, and having the original necessarily isn't important to me. Maybe it works, so I've been selling them like regular customers who like really appreciate it, and like, oh, I remember that enthusiasm, like,
right. Sure.
And so, but then there's just this stuff, that I'm like, like a bunch of my 45s are downstairs, and my youngest, she was like, what are you going to do with all this stuff? And I was like, well, this will put you through college. Like, this box of 45s will put you through college. And she was just
That's
like...
crazy.
And so, we're kind of...
Does she get that?
Huh? Yeah, I don't... Probably not. You know what I mean? Like, why would it matter? Like, who... Like, how does
Why
that
could
work?
that- yeah.
Like...
Yeah.
And so she was flipping through them. And she's like, well, why do you keep these? You never listen to them anymore. And I said, pick out any 45 in that box, and I'll tell you why I'm going to keep it. And so she's flipping through there, and she's kind of going back, trying to find like whatever. And this is no lie. She picks out the first Minor Threat 45 and says,
wow.
why do you have this? And I said, I have that record because I remember standing at your grandmother's ironing board, ironing out $4 bills to mail to Discord Records to get that record.
That's
Not
so
knowing
cool.
if I was going to get it in 2 weeks or 3 months
Yeah.
or never.
Yeah.
You know? And then that record showing up at my house, you know, at our house, you know, 4 weeks later or whatever it is. And I was like, that's why I have that record.
Wow.
You know? And I mean, you're probably on the tail end of that, like, you know, if you're in the whole like punk rock scene of like Maximum Rock and Roll and like,
Yeah, yeah.
you know, you mail away and like,
Totally. No, I remember that.
yeah, and so it was just like a different world, you know, and so
Yep.
it wasn't immediate. There had to be effort, and there is a little bit of that now, but it's kind of like a manufactured scarcity. Like, I'm gonna
Sure.
make the colored vinyl swirl. Like we get calls. I'm like, I'm calling for the clear vinyl with the red specks in it, not the clear vinyl with the black specks in it, you know, and just kind of like, all right,
Come on.
we're kind of like
Yeah.
pushing the envelope here a little bit. But I mean, if that's what gets you through the night, then that's what gets you through the night. You know what I mean?
Sure. If
It's
that's,
just-
it motivates you in the same way and
Yeah,
that's your
yeah.
version of it.
Yeah, and so you know, so there's that. I think there's just that that appreciation that comes through time and it not necessarily being easy or whatever. You know what I mean? So it was and not just again, you know, in a world of like immediacy, how do you begin to like strain out what's meaningful
Yeah.
when the effort to obtain it is all the same or pretty much the same? And so then where does that kind of like take hold in your personal and then begin to like elevate up the scale of like, this is really important and, you know, all that kind of stuff. So,
Yeah.
So, but
It's interesting. I hadn't really thought about the impact of all that on like the development of taste and character and stuff. That when it's all out there, you don't have to make choices.
you don't have to. And it's free.
Yeah.
Well, for like $9 a month or whatever it is.
Right. Or it's all free if you're willing to
Yeah, yeah.
do one extra level of searches.
Almost free.
Yeah,
It's
right.
so close to free.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
It's just like,
Yeah.
yeah. So I think that's, you know, but then that's just the new reality, and that's
Yep.
what it is. And so,
Yep.
how does that appreciation evolve and whatever, and like, it's, you know, I'm not saying that there's not like meaningful music being consumed out there or being manufactured, because there definitely is. I mean, there are high school kids that come into my store every day who I see myself in them at that age of just enthusiasm. They got their check, they cashed it. You know, like we would get paid on Fridays. I would cash it. I would save $4 for a 6-pack of Max beer, which is like the cheapest thing that you could get, and a bag of pretzels for the weekend. And then I'd spend the rest of it at Everybody's Records.
Right on.
And just blow it all.
Yeah.
You know, and like half the time you didn't even make, I mean, Tim and Nolan Benz, who were twins, kind of ran the place then. And they would just have a bag. Like, here you go, there's your bag, Darren. Like, and I would be like, here's my $60.
They
And
just
I'd
have
look
it
at
ready-
it in the
ready
car.
for you?
Yeah. And I would even like,
Oh, that's so cool.
you know, and it would be like, and you'd open it and you're like, oh my God, there's like all pairs and Rima and like fucking used Devo 45 and this and, you know, like just this whole like,
Yeah.
And then like, you know, one day, like, you know, it was like a Nomads record. What was it? Like, it really was this like ground turning, this like
Yeah.
ship kind of like, whoa. And it was like the Nomads, the first Nomads record, like first stateside comp called like Outburst or something on like Homestead Records or something, you know, whatever label was never going to pay the Nomads, you know, Homestead or what was it, Dutch East India or whatever. And then like the Primitives and like a Mississippi Fred McDowell record.
Wow.
And I was just like, three completely different things going
Yeah,
on,
yeah, yeah.
you know? And so,
And we talk about curated, by an algorithm versus curated by a human being.
But yeah, exactly. And that was kind of like, there's part of me, like we have customers that like, oh man, Henry's going to dig this. I'm going to put this back for him. But then so many people are doing that on their own through that algorithm on their phone that like, I don't even know how.
It's almost like it's designed to remove the things like that.
Yeah, exactly.
That would broaden.
Yeah, that would broaden. And it definitely like, but then you see these like monumental shifts in some customers who were just buying like soul and funk 2 weeks ago and now are buying like Japanese ambient records, and it was just like, holy crap, how the fuck did that happen, like, and something got into his feed,
That's fun, though.
Yeah, exactly. And then, so it's kind of fascinating. Like they come in with these lists of like, man, I need this and this is on this label and blah, blah, blah. And like you start tracking all that stuff down and things like that. But, I think it's just, from my mind and how I collected and appreciated and curated my own stuff versus the tools that are in the palm of your hand now to do it. It's just a different set of, we had the maximum rock and roll classified ads.
Right.
And you have your phone, so it's just kind of like.
It is what it is.
Each are kind of the same thing, but they're not, and so, but I think really when it comes down to it is just like, and I think that's why there's not like these like, you have Radiohead and you have, these different kind of like career multi-album, bands, but there's fewer and fewer and fewer of them. Part of it is that they didn't put up the numbers, so done, they're out of there.
Yep.
But then, like I look at Wussy and they're like, coming up on 20 years of putting records out, and it's just this slow burn band that like,
in it for the long haul.
Yeah, and like it was, I remember talking to Chuck about like when we did the first Wussy record, and he brought me the thing. I was like, God damn, this is really good, Chuck. What do you want to do with it? He's like, I don't know. Like, and it was something to the effect of like, I had the #1 song on CMJ and the #3 song on MTV, and I'm in Morgantown, West Virginia, playing on a Thursday night to 14 people, that's when it was easy, and so, and now and now I'm a 60-year-old with a broken stonemason's back, so I'm not gonna, so they're just a great woodshed band, you know what I mean? And so, man, they have a following that, holy moly.
And getting more and more press with every record and getting better at what they do still.
And, it's amazing to watch those orders come in, when they announce a new record, and it's like A&R guy at Matador, A&R guy at Merge, and, and the deal is that they just don't want, they have no interest in these massive commitments to touring.
Yeah.
And that's really what you have to do, and so, and that's,
Yep.
So, but it is what it is, and like, they just put out great records, and people love them, and so. But,
and there's still a place for that.
And there's still a place for that, exactly. And now with like, and that's the good thing about the internet and stuff like that. Yep. You can reach all those people. Like, you like go down that list of like zip codes, and you're like, holy shit.
Yeah, you can find that one fan in France who.
Oh yeah, it's from Vancouver Island to Key West, Florida, to like, it's all over. Newfoundland just sent a record to Istanbul the other day,
That's so great.
How, and that's the beauty of the internet too, so.
Yeah, I interviewed Kim Taylor not too long ago, and she was talking about like what's going on with her in China. The kind of thing that couldn't have happened without all of that. Yeah, there's good and bad. It's just like, how is your mind calibrated for digestion? Right.
And mine is not calibrated that way. You know what I mean? Like although I do stumble across things, that, old soul or rockabilly stuff that I was like, man, how the fuck did this get past me?
Yeah.
Like, holy shit, like I've been at this a long time. And then he's got 4 records out, like,
how did I never hear this?
Like, Jesus, hand in my card,
Right.
So.
Now, one of the bands that I used to work with, we used to have this discussion fairly regularly in the van.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what was the last thing that blew your mind? What was the last show? What was the last album that made you, that brought a tear to your eye, that made you like stop? And it all came back to like, do you cultivate the ability to have your breath taken away by music, by art, by a show, by a record? Mm-hmm. And I think that's still that thing. Like, are you cultivating the capacity for wonder?
Yeah. No.
And where are you like letting that into your life?
That's what we want to. I think that's what I want to get out of people more and more. You know, like this card set, when you're looking at it, you're like, wow.
Yeah, seriously. Like,
holy crap, these are cool. Like that's all I want.
It's really cool.
And so, and maybe you'll get hip to something and like, man, I'm going to go figure out Hobo Jack Atkins.
Yeah, right.
And like
go down a rabbit trail for a little while.
Yeah. And I mean, and then the internet plays a massive role in it because none of his records are in print. And you know what I mean? Like, I mean, there's a ton of really great stuff out there, but then you listen to him and you're like, oh yeah, that's the song that Alison Krauss does. Yeah.
Right,
or whatever, and then you're like, oh,
came from somewhere.
Here comes the thing again, bang, 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 here, connect the dots.
Yeah.
And so, I think that's, in a world of like rush, just this constant, whether it's news media or entertainment or life or bill paying or whatever it is, like just the allowing art or music or literature or a fucking baseball game.
Yeah, whatever it is.
Just to commit time to be fucking blown away.
Yeah.
That's like...
To be present enough.
Yeah, exactly.
For a little while.
Like, there's a local guy, Chris Bergen. He did... I've kind of reconnected with him, like, know him pretty well, like, before I moved. And he did, like, that 1,000 Years Too Late retrospective down at the CAC, which was like the history of like small label souls in Cincinnati and stuff like that. Chris is like one of these dudes that just like, I was talking to him the other day. I was like, Chris, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. Like, this is what I do. And he's just railing this stuff off like, holy shit, you know, like, and I'm just like, I got to hear that. I got to hear this. And he's like, I'll send it to you. I'm just like, I have never heard of these guys. Like, oh, he was in the 400 Years of What? And then this dude was in this guy. And then he was in the Python Dance Man. And he was it's like, oh, okay, that's cool. But then but he was one of these dudes that like, find the publisher's name, and then, all right, let's get the...
Doing all the detective work.
Let's get the phone book out and start calling. Like he found Kenny Smith. I mean, how many Kenny Smiths are there in the book? All right, Kenny Smith number 1, Kenny Smith number 2, and then finds them, So, and then we ended up putting a compilation out on him and things like that. And so, but it's, like that to me, I was just like, I went home and I was just like, man, I was so excited. You know what I mean? It's just like, it's like, it's like when my wife comes back from a Montessori convention, it's the same level of like excitement. What I learned, and I was just like, holy shit, I did not know that there was a band called the Truth Corporation, and Chris has a VHS of them playing in a parking lot on Lynn Street for a waif benefit, And she was just like, why does this matter to you? You know what I mean? She's very happy for me or whatever. And then, but it's just kind of like, it's one more piece, like, holy shit, like, oh my God, that's it. That was the part, so, it's just, but that was my last, like, 2 weeks ago or whatever, when I started, like, track down
just
Chris
when you
again.
Thought you'd seen it all.
Oh yeah. And part of me was just like, man, I want to do, like, I know that he was working on a couple things, and I was like, I wonder if those, I said, I've never seen those turn up. I'm going to call him. And I was like, man, let's just do these things. Let's just get them done, and so there's so much stuff. And then, like, two of my, like, favorite things, there's this band called Funky Tong, and then you can Google it. It's called, a song called "Wag Your Tail." It's like one of the first vocoder, Cincinnati vocoder records.
Yeah.
And then there was this really stripped down rap 45 by a band called Black Ice. And both recorded at Vetco Records, which was a bluegrass.
Like when was this?
Or like mid 70s.
Okay.
And recorded at Vetco, which was a bluegrass thing up in Carthage. And I'm like, how the hell did this happen, first of all? But then they end up basically being the same people. Like, and I'm just, and Chris told me that. I was like, how the fuck, like, what? You know, like, holy shit, you know? Like, I was like, oh, this stuff has to come out, you know? Like, yeah, Wag Your Tail. And then the B-side is a song called Sweet and Creamy Love. And then, and then Black Ice was just a song called Crack Kills.
Wow.
And then there was an instrumental, just like a claptrap, you know, you know, just like, but it's just, you know, it's so like, bink, that era. It just hits the moment right there, you know, like, so.
Right on.
Yeah, so anyway.
All right. We're probably going to give these guys their table back.
All right, sounds good.
Thank you so much.
No problem.
Really appreciate it.
I don't know if I answered any of your questions.
No, it was exactly what I'd hoped for.
All right, cool.
This episode of The Distiller was recorded live at Melt Revival, located at 4100 Hamilton Avenue at the corner of Hamilton and Blue Rock in Northside, Cincinnati. Thanks so much to Diane, Shannon, and everyone at Melt for letting us take over the back room for a little while. Melt is honestly one of my favorite restaurants in Cincinnati, and since Diane and Shannon took over ownership last year, it's only gotten better and better. You can find links to their website and social media pages on our website at thedistillerpodcast.com. Stop by Melt for breakfast, lunch, or dinner, and please tell them you heard it on The Distiller when you do. Huge thanks to Darren Blase for hanging out with us on a Wednesday morning. Darren and his brother Jim have been creating space for wonder in Northside and helping to tell and shape the story of Cincinnati's musical history for over 20 years, and they're going stronger than ever. Stop by Shake It, say hi to Darren, Jim, and the crew. They're located at 4156 Hamilton Avenue in Cincinnati, and the store is open at 10 a.m. every day except Sunday when they open at noon. You can see photos for this episode, including Darren's super cool Cincinnati Music Legends trading cards, on our website, where you can also find links to Shake It's website and social media pages. It's a special place, and we really appreciate Darren sharing a bit of the story with us. The Distiller is produced, recorded, and hosted by me, Brandon Dawson. Our show is mixed and edited by Justin Golden. Our logo was designed by Scott Ryan, and our videos are by Mike Helm of Minute Moments Pictures. You can find The Distiller wherever you listen to podcasts, and you can listen and download every episode at thedistillerpodcast.com with links, photos of the guests, and a map of all show locations. If you like what we're doing, please follow, like, and share our posts on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And if you'd like to help support us in creating the show, go to thedistillerpodcast.com and click on the Become a Patron button for more information. Finally, we love it if you'd rate and review The Distiller wherever you listen. Believe it or not, that actually does make a difference. And you can always email us at mail@thedistillerpodcast.com to tell us who you think should be on the show to talk about their search for meaningful work, or where you think we should record the next show. So whether by email, on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram, drop us a line. We always love to hear from you. Until next time, I'm Brandon Dawson. Thanks for listening to The Distiller. Bye-bye.